have a literally full house. It's
So it's really.
okay. We better have really good things to say, guys. Okay.
We really have to be interested now.
We're ready, yeah? We're ready. They're asking, yeah?
Yeah.
We go for it.
Okay. Hi, everybody. So thank you, everyone, for coming to our panel early in the morning today. And my name is Matt Kasper, and I'll be moderating our panel, which is focusing on how journalism and activism can or cannot work together, or where it intersects, and speaking about it with the experiences of media outlets on the ground from a pretty large geographical scope. So what we'll first do is just introduce ourselves and a bit about the media that we work in, and so that you have a bit of an understanding of where we're coming from and what experiences and challenges our media outlets are experiencing. And then we'll start discussing the topic that we said we're going to talk about. And then later on, we'll open up for questions and get any feedback from you and answer anything that you might be wondering, or questions that might have popped up during the talk. So actually, Isabela, if you would start.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. It's super nice to see everybody here. I think it's an important issue that we have to discuss together. So I'm happy to see that everybody woke up early. My name is Izabela Moi. I come from a small non-profit news organization that focuses on local journalism in São Paulo, Brazil. So São Paulo is the biggest metropolis in South America. It's made of 39 municipalities and adds up to 21 million people living together. And our organization has been covering exclusively low-income communities from those cities since 2010. So we are around for 12 years. And basically, so it's local and hyper-local journalism with a small team of 20 people, full-time people, and we work with a network of around 70 people that are local correspondents. Local correspondents, like the analogy for international correspondents, so journalists that are based in the communities that they cover. So it's not citizen journalists, I have to state that. It's really professional local journalists, but doing from within the communities. And I pass the word to Isam.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Lovely to see everyone here. I am Isam Uraiqat. I am the editor and co-founder of a political satire magazine called Alhudood. It's primarily in Arabic, focused towards the Middle East. It was launched in 2013, soon after the Arab Spring, and kind of grew in various ways, depending on the challenges that we faced. We started off in 2013, and since then we run quite a few things. So it's like a major part of our work is obviously covering the authoritarianism in the region and how it plays part, and covering lots of rights issues about the region. And then a big part of our work is also covering how the media, which is the majority in the region, is politically funded or government-funded propaganda machines, how they cover the news and how they don't cover the news, and how they use it as their tool to do the government's bids. So that's so we satirize that, and then we satirize the media itself in a major way. We run an annual award for worst Arab journalism. Yeah, that kind of covers the general aspect of our work. Thank you.
Hi. Stated, we don't cover that, and then we explain why we don't cover those kind of stories, and then we analyzed why this violence was again happening, and then we could also mourn those victims, and and also had an answer to our audience that was claiming why we didn't had a piece about that. So in some situations we do refrain from only, you know, following what we had discussed, but like we answer the moment and the need of the moment. It's very like, sorry to make it longer, but like, I don't know, like if you're aware, like Agencia Mural in Portuguese, Mural, it also has a convergence with the muralista art movement from the Mexican that says like, you know, you put our aim is our guideline and is to put the voices of the ordinary people in their stories in the, you know, in our stories, and so we always have to engage with the audience and know what they are really thinking about the situation and to reflect that in our news production.
Can I ask, and you're not covering it through the voices of the victims either? Like,
no, because, well, part of the mission is really like to take that, because that's the only image that they have in the whole metropolitan area. That's the only story going on, although it goes on. And so they have a lot of mainstream outlets that are covering it. And we have, I don't know if Juno is here, it's like we have a very good website in Brazil, a small news organization that only covers police violence. So they are doing that on a daily basis. So we really chose to cover, like, and to show them that there are other things going on and that they are part of the metropolitan city, and and the choice is not about leaving those communities or getting proud of the ghetto, but it's really transforming those neighborhoods to become part of the city and with the same access to the rights that the other richer parts have. So we did have to make a choice on that.
thank you.
I think it's sometimes, I mean, it's like the reason we don't, I mean, obviously all of our editorial meetings are mainly quarrels and like deep discussions, but we don't go existential because we just have a clear guideline on which we kind of built together over the years, which we modify as we go along. So it's like there always reaches a point where it's like, but that's not what we do, as you're saying, and then that becomes quite clear. So I think if you're prepared and know what you're doing, then it becomes easy. Like those conversations don't have to go for as long. And yeah,
It's true.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's an interesting example. It's one way of navigating this situation, because at the same time, you could argue that, you know, while all these mainstream art outlets are covering these topics, also covering the topic allows for a different perspective that's also more wholesome and more broad and shows more than just this one side, just shows the kind of mainstream mentality or stereotypes about the people. So I think, I mean, this is maybe one way of navigating that is through editorial, through clear, I mean, what you were speaking as well, you're clear and transparent about, not just about the media outlet in general, but about each individual piece. So if it is a clear op-ed format, you're able to do a lot more there while being completely honest about where the ideas are coming from and not trying to pose this as if this is in itself some type of narrative. And I think that, I mean, what you said as well earlier about activism in societies where media freedom is so is in such a bad situation, where there is only propaganda, simply doing, you know, trying to be as unbiased as possible is itself an act of activism. And I think my team would hate me for saying, yes, okay, then they are also activists. But it's, I mean, this is in reality, if we look at it from when we're not looking at it from this kind of placative idea of what it is to be an activist is on the street with the banner, you know, it's also the act of following guidelines. And I think that this is something which sounds very simple in that you said you have a clear set of guidelines, so the quarrels don't really last forever because it's clear what everyone has already signed up for. They signed up to work at this media, though they know when they're writing for you or producing for you that they have certain rules to follow. And and so then, but at the same time, it's quite difficult, you know, to and you have to constantly be updating them. Yeah, we had the problem during the war in Nagorno-Karabakh where not only did we have to learn, there were a lot of situations we were confronted with during an active war situation that we'd never seen before. So we had some guidelines for how to handle flare-ups, but we didn't have guidelines to handle a full-fledged war. And we had to update them, and we also had to navigate the fact that our audience was not very happy with the fact that we were still adhering to these principles of trying to stay unbiased, not using hate speech, and not going into this nationalistic tone, which most of the country was kind of already engulfed in. And so I think it's a bit, it's a difficult kind of place to be in on one hand, but coming back to the audience, because I still think this is an interesting point. It's not just the expectations they have, but I was thinking while you were speaking about how you don't also want to become an echo chamber where you're only speaking to people who are kind of already aware of what you're going to be talking about. So with satire, maybe it's you know, it's also this enjoyment of seeing, okay, like someone else also gets it, you know, like they also see how ridiculous the situation is, and it's a way to kind of deal with that. But at the same time, if you want to make a change, as you said, not by your own hands, you also want to then create some type, there has to be some type of act on the ground. So there has to be some type of debate or some kind of impetus that people receive when they read this news or consume this news. I don't like consume, actually, it's not the, but watch, let's say, interact with in some way. So how do you, so you know, you've all established yourselves in the last 10 to 12 years. How do you reach out then further, really target people who maybe are not so close? You know, I know you do focus on some topics, but do you have certain kind of strategies to reach out to those audiences outside, to try and get more people to start discussing this, and then maybe lead to change kind of as this ripple effect?
Yeah, as I mentioned, I mean, our motto used to be, there is not a struggle too small for us to cover. Wherever there is struggle for social justice, political justice, access to resources, to public resources, equality, whatever, it is something that would be interesting for us. And so by reaching out to those, even if we don't have a reporter actually, you know, involved in each of these struggles for change, they are on our radar, and sometimes we bring them, for example, in webinars, or and then something really interesting happens in those webinars, that all of a sudden you have virtually, yes, on Zoom, I'm talking about the last couple of years, sitting next to each other, people who otherwise would never have found a common ground or even be in the same space together, but creating or allowing this space for them to actually present what it is that they are struggling for. All of a sudden, this understanding emerges that we are actually fighting about not such different things. We are about our equal share in the public pie, or whatever, the resources. And so through those connections, we do that. But I just one quick remark about, you mentioned we don't want to being, you know, in this echo chamber, just talking to our, I wouldn't underestimate the importance of talking to your audience either, or to your community, or your, you know, envisioned community, because sometimes that community needs that platform that allows it to be seen, that provides it with vocabulary. I think any struggle for change needs proper vocabulary, and I think that this is something that we really, through, not necessarily through reporting, but through analysis. When do you call a certain action a terrorist act? When do you not? What words do we use when we talk about reality? And those words create, you know, awareness, and I think that I wouldn't underestimate that much the importance of talking to your own crowd and audience as well. It is important.
I think we had a long journey in audience discovery. In the beginning, when we launched it, we had much more people, and our audience came from the neighborhoods that we didn't cover, like the richer communities, because they simply discovered that there were those communities in São Paulo, and that was actually much more going on there than only like the crimes and the good deeds of big companies. So in the beginning I think it was the majority. We didn't actually like had the numbers at that time, but like all the engagement and all the feedback that we had, it was always about audience that came from, you know, from the mainstream media, and just and then what we did is like, that was pre-COVID, like we did a lot of live events, like we infiltrated cultural events or events that were already going on in the local communities. And we simply put up a stand there, and we asked for permission, of course, and then we print out all our stories, and simply we were there talking about what we were, like our news organization, and we shared printed stories from the website, just for them to be aware, you know, of the website. And we did that in cultural events, and we did that in public schools, and we did that in private universities that the majority of the students come from those communities. So we did a lot just to be present and to exist to the audience that we wanted to serve. And I think now we are in another challenge. I think it's really like now serving them more on the way that we want to do more about a constructive journalism or something, like not on the etiquette of that, but so there is another challenge on reaching out a new audience now, but that's what we did.
Thank you. For us, I think when we started off, obviously as satire, it was, you know, your audience is the liberals. They just come flocking in, and it was, you know, you're selling to a crowd that's expecting it. But then as we covered more and sort of like also were hitting against all of the idols of the liberals themselves, we started losing the people who are just there to, like, you know, to support their own arguments, and getting more people from like whether it was conservatives or from different communities or different classes or all of that. So now I think we are more homogenous, and we are in some way, I think, in an echo chamber, but it's not a nationalistic or a class one or something, but it is more of a one that believes in critique and criticism to make the world you're in better. So, and then reaching out of that and across all sorts of layers of society becomes very, very difficult, because you're trying to change a mentality rather than to get a new audience or a new segment. We are definitely struggling with that. It's very difficult, yeah.
All right, thanks. So I would like to open it up then for questions now. So if anyone has a question, I don't know how it works with the microphones actually. If there's a microphone to hand out, or there's no microphone.
Stand
All right,
up.
so I.
We repeat.
You have to go there and speak into that microphone.
Okay, come on up. And
Pressure on everyone.
I don't know if I remove my mask. Okay, can you all hear me? Hi, my name is Irene. I work for StreetNet International, who is a global alliance of trade union representative informal economy workers and street vendors in marginalized communities all around the world. And my question is centered exactly around that. So I work in the press and media department. When you work with marginalized communities, with people who generally do not have a voice in mass media or in media in general, there is a fine line to walk, which is you speak for them and you want to get their stories as much as you can out in the media. But on the other hand, you do not want to overcome their voices. So you don't want to, you mentioned the positioning, the privilege. So I am like a white woman based in Italy, and I'm trying to get the voices out of people who are based in South America, in Azerbaijan, really all over the world, especially in Africa and Southern Asia. So where is the fine line between, and what I know there's no definitive answer, but I wanted to have like your opinions. What is the line between that as a communication professional or a press officer, you have to walk between, we want to get their stories out and we want to give them a voice, but on the other hand, we don't want to like over-determine them from our point of view of staff, of like, or people in the organizations who do not live directly those situations. So I think this is something I struggle with, like ethically and also professionally every day. So I wanted to have a little bit of your perspective on this. Thank you.
At Agencia Mural, I am the only one that does not come from those communities, and most of the time I am invisible. The people who report from the communities that we serve are young professionals that live in those communities. So we don't give them a voice. They have one. We just give the space for them. And most of the time what you're gonna see, for example, in Brazil, in all events, it's not me I'm the executive director. But because I am in this position that of course I have longer years of experience as a professional journalist, and I lead this organization, but it's also part of the mission of this organization to show all the faces in the public debate. So in Brazil, if you're gonna, to any event that Agencia Mural is talking, it's not gonna be me. It's gonna be me, one of my partners, one of my team that is gonna speak. So I think the fine line, it's not a fine line, it's really like big line. It's like just shut yourself down and let them let them speak. That's in our case at least.
I think you must be more than me further.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add to that. Just try to. It's a constant call for checking yourself. If you give a wide enough platform for the different, and I think that's through. And again, because we have no problem recognizing ourselves as activists, we are engaged in those communities, and I'm very proud to say that we actually gained their trust. It is not something to be taken for granted that Palestinians from Gaza are willing to write for a Hebrew media in Israel. This is not something it's not for granted. So we are very much aware and very much grateful for the trust that we get from those different communities, and when we are being considered as co-invested in the struggle itself, then I think it's somehow. But we are always aware of the fact that we are on the oppressive side. I mean, we are part of the. This is very
So, are there any other questions? Please don't feel daunted. Just come up, and I know it's a bit to ask to come up. Just, I saw actually you in the back. You had your hand up first.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can repeat the question actually. Then, if you would, yeah. Thank you for coming up.
I have two quick questions. So the first is, sorry, I missed your name. The Hebrew Media Outlet. Thank you so much. You mentioned how one of the challenges is whether to include the Israeli source, for example, and you know that's a lie, or to include it, and then you know that's not good enough. So my question is, why can't we have a third option, which is to include them and show them through the report, show the audience through your reporting that they are lies? Because the problem is that if we leave these voices out, you're providing making it easier to the parties or authorities that think that you're biased, because they could tell people like, see, they're biased, they didn't include us at all. And just including both voices is not good enough. So this is my first question, where's the third option? My second question is related to the audience. So you explained how, I loved your definition of how activism is about change, and that you're doing this through the tool of professional journalism. And I think we as journalists can understand this. But what about the public? How do you explain this to the public? Because, and I really want to hear, like, practically, what do you do about that? Because, for example, I'm from Egypt, and activism has become a word with a bad reputation, right? And the media, it immediately means, oh, you're biased. So we're not going to go there because you're biased. So how do you explain what you exactly said, that we're still activists as pro a cause, but we uphold these golden standards of journalism, of fact-checking, etc. And perhaps do you invite the audience, like do you have an invitation for the audience to hold you accountable by saying, if you notice that we did something wrong, come and, get in touch? Thank you.
All right, so correct me if I say anything wrong here, but so the first.
What did I heard?
I just for the live stream, so we have to do it again. So, so the first question was about how you have the challenge of if you include the official side or not, and it's either you have one side or you have two sides. But in doing so, you kind of validate, that the official narrative. What would be the third option to kind of show through reporting that actually that's not true what they're saying? So what is this third option that we could do in order to kind of not seem biased and not be called biased by the authorities by not covering their topic, their opinion? And the second question is about activism and how it has kind of become a word that people might say is, okay, that's activism, that's we don't want to go there. How do you explain to your audience or to the public that you can be an activist and also uphold journalistic values or ethics, etc.?
Thank you so much for the question. Actually, we do go by the third option that you suggested quite a lot, and this has been our solution, our way out of it. But we ask for the Army's comment or response, not in order to present ourselves as unbiased or two sides, because we don't believe that the Palestinian voices are being evened out by the Army. It's not two sides of a story, and this is why, for example, we will not give a voice to settlers, because that's not, we demand answers from the Army because they are responsible, they are accountable, and we need to hold them accountable. But I think that personally I wrote at least 3 different columns about the lies of the Army spokesperson. I mean, so we definitely make it very, very clear for our audience that these responses are mostly false.
I have one comment about how to make the audience understand that we do a part of the activism, and then the second part is in their hands, because we do a lot of pieces on service journalism and to help them realize, know, and access the rights that they already have, but they are denied by either by the lack of information, like, or simply not knowing. So we cover a lot about there's like a local political institutions that common citizens can participate, can be voted, and can vote on city laws, on things like that. So we cover a lot about local democratic participation, and that is open to everybody. So we do a lot in the elections process, for example. We don't really cover campaign. What we do is like we cover how they have to do, what they have to do to update their rights to vote, and how, if it's their first time, what they have to do, and how they have to look for information to better vote. So we do a lot of those kind of reports to really empower those populations that don't really think that the city they live in is theirs as well. So they get more comfortable in going around and understand that they are citizens that pay taxes as anybody else, maybe much more compared to the salaries that they get. So we do have a way of empowering them in the local administrations specifically, so they think and they start to believing that they can transform their own realities.
Yeah, so, and just really quickly to add to that, from our experiences, how do you explain to the audience, I think you just can explain it as well. So when we had the situation of everyone cursing us for not promoting kind of this nationalist rhetoric during the war, we said, we are a media outlet. This is our ethical guidelines. Now we've got them on our website as well. So this is the situation. I think you have to, you can respect that the audience will understand that, and some did and some didn't. That's kind of, I think, all you can do. At least it was all we could do. So I'm very sorry, but I'm being told that we have to stop, and so we can't take any more questions. But we're still here afterwards, so if you do have any questions, please feel free to come up. And thank you so much, everybody, for coming, and thank you, Orly, Isam, and Isa.
No, take it. Of course.
Don't tell me that. I just
run.
Apparently, actually, my bus is in an hour and a half, not right now, so that's not too bad.
Thank you so much for the great panel. I want to
Loads
say
of time,
thank you so much
loads
for
of
this,
time.
because we don't, being Egyptian, and we don't communicate, so it was quite impressive to hear a perspective, and I think we're missing that. We always have this stereotype about each other.